The sun stood high above the pines, pouring light over the narrow trail that cut across the reserve. Megan walked slowly, her boots crunching on dry needles and her eyes sweeping the ground for tracks. It had been an ordinary patrol until the sound reached her. At first she thought it was a bird, but the pitch was too low, broken, urgent. It carried through the trees like something wounded and desperate. She froze, her hand automatically going to the radio clipped at her vest. Silence followed for a moment. Then the cry came again, strained and harsh. Her chest tightened. This was not a bird. It was a wildcat. She moved quickly, weaving between the pines and brush, the cries growing louder. They rose and broke into choking, guttural sounds, each one more desperate than the last. Megan knew the territory well. A few hundred yards ahead, the path dipped toward a marshy patch. In late spring, water collected there, turning soil into a trap. She broke into a jog, branches catching her sleeves as the noise pulled her forward. The ground softened under her boots, squelching with every step. A sour smell of mud and rotting vegetation filled her nose. She slowed, scanning the clearing. Then she saw it. In the center of the bog, half submerged in thick gray sludge, a lynx struggled. Its body was sunk nearly to the chest, legs churning helplessly beneath the surface. Every time it tried to push upward, the mud sucked harder, dragging it back. The animal's ears were flat, its eyes wide and wild, yellow flashing against the dark muck. It lifted its head and let out another broken cry. Megan's breath caught. A lynx, one of the reserve's most elusive residents, was right in front of her, fighting for its life. For a split second, she just stood there, stunned by the sight. Then training snapped back into place. She pulled the radio from her vest and pressed the button, calling for assistance. Static answered. She tried again. Nothing but dead air. The marsh was notorious for killing reception. She cursed under her breath and shoved the radio back. The lynx twisted violently, throwing mud into the air. Its claws slashed at nothing, mouth opening in a rasping cry that ended in a cough. Megan's pulse raced. The animal was sinking slowly. If she didn't act, it would be gone in minutes. She scanned the edge of the bog. There were branches, reeds, a few fallen logs. Nothing close enough to grab. She took a cautious step toward the edge. The mud gave way beneath her boot, but she pulled back just in time. She would have to be smarter than brute force. She knelt, eyes locked on the lynx. The animal's gaze met hers, unblinking, fierce yet pleading. It was a look she had seen before in injured creatures, the raw will to survive. But this was different. This was direct, almost deliberate, as if the wildcat understood she was its only chance. Megan swallowed hard. She whispered, half to herself, half to the animal, "Hold on. I'm not leaving you." The lynx gave a low growl, more a tremor than a threat, and tried again to pull itself free. Its legs slipped under, bubbles rising around its chest. Megan's heart thudded painfully. She scanned the ground, spotted a long branch, and yanked it from the weeds. She stretched it out toward the lynx, pressing the tip against the mud near its shoulder. The cat twisted toward it, paw slapping against the wood, but the branch was too short. Megan pulled it back, teeth clenched. She needed something longer, stronger. The cries grew weaker. The lynx's chest heaved, its movements slowing. Panic gnawed at her ribs. She grabbed another branch, heavier, longer this time, and dragged it closer. Dropping to her knees, she slid it forward carefully, inch by inch. Mud sucked at the wood, trying to swallow it whole. Megan shoved harder, bracing with both hands. At last, the end reached near the lynx. The animal's paw shot out, claws sinking into the branch. The sudden jolt almost pulled it from her grip, but she held firm, leaning back with her weight. The lynx clung desperately, its body trembling with effort. Mud pulled against its chest as it tried to lift. Megan strained, arms burning, keeping the branch steady. For a moment it seemed to work. The animal's body rose an inch, but then the ground shifted, the weight too much. With a splash, the lynx slipped deeper, sinking nearly to its neck. Megan gasped, yanking the branch back before it disappeared completely. Mud covered her hands, black and sticky. The lynx let out a hoarse, guttural cry, thrashing weakly. Megan's mind raced. She couldn't reach it like this. She couldn't carry its weight alone. Yet leaving it was not an option. She glanced around again, breathing hard, and spotted a cluster of fallen boards stacked near the old observation post just beyond the tree line. Hope flickered. If she could drag them here, She might build a surface to stand on, something to spread the weight. Her legs moved before she had fully decided. She sprinted toward the boards, boots pounding over roots and damp soil. Behind her, the lynx's cries echoed, softer now but still desperate, pulling at her with every step. She gritted her teeth, hauled the boards onto her shoulder one by one, and staggered back toward the bog. Sweat rolled down her temple despite the cool air. She dropped the first board at the edge, shoved it forward, then another. The makeshift path began to take shape. She crawled forward on her stomach, testing each step, spreading her weight as much as possible. The lynx watched, head barely above the sludge, eyes locked on her. Its breaths came in ragged bursts. Megan pushed the last board into place, closing the gap. Her arms shook with strain, but she forced herself to steady them. She was close enough now to try again. She picked up the branch, slid it out slowly. The lynx reached, claws hooking. Megan whispered again, steady and calm, "That's it. Don't let go." This time, when the lynx pulled, Megan heaved backward with all the strength she had, digging her boots into the mud. The branch creaked, her muscles screamed, but the lynx rose another few inches. Its chest cleared the sludge, then its forelegs. For one breathtaking second, Megan thought they had it, but the board beneath her shifted, threatening to sink. She slammed her elbow down, holding position, refusing to release her grip. The lynx's growl rattled in its throat, its eyes blazing with fear and determination. Megan's heart pounded in sync with its struggle. The outcome hung in balance, one slip away from disaster. She gritted her teeth, breath ragged, refusing to surrender. The board held, but only barely. The branch bowed under the weight. The lynx hung half free, half trapped, its body trembling in exhaustion. Megan's mind screamed for options, her body locked in place. She knew she had bought only minutes. If she didn't find another way, both the lynx and her chance of saving it would sink into the mud forever. Megan's arms trembled from holding the branch steady, her boots half buried in the damp edge of the bog. The lynx clung weakly, body half lifted, then sagged again. Mud sucked at its legs with a thick, greedy pull. Megan's breath came fast, her chest burning from the strain. She had to get closer, but every step was a gamble. One wrong move, and she could end up in the same trap. She pulled the branch back and shuffled carefully onto the makeshift path she had built with the old boards. Each shift of her weight sent a groan through the wood. She dropped to her knees, spreading her weight, and edged forward. The lynx's ears flicked, eyes wide, tracking her every move. It let out a low growl, not a threat but a warning, as if to say both of them were in danger. Megan reached out with the branch again, pressing the end closer. This time she tried to angle it beneath the lynx's shoulder to give it something to push against. For a moment it worked. The animal shoved hard, mud splashing as its chest lifted. Megan felt hope surge, but then the lynx panicked. With a violent thrash it threw its body sideways. The board under her cracked, and a spray of filthy water drenched her face. The lynx sank deeper with the movement, mud swallowing up to its throat. Megan's heart lurched. She scrambled back a few inches, coughing, wiping her eyes. The lynx's head thrashed wildly, its mouth opening in a harsh cry that echoed across the clearing. It was going under. "No, no, hold on," she shouted, voice ragged. She thrust the branch out again, desperate. The cat's paw struck against it, claws catching, but the grip was weak, sliding. Megan braced her arms, pulling, but it was like tugging against the whole bog. The mud pulled harder, dragging the animal down inch by inch. Her stomach twisted. She was running out of options and out of time. She dropped the branch, scanning the edge of the clearing for anything else. The old boards weren't enough. She needed leverage, something stronger. Her radio sat useless on her vest. She yanked it free, pressing the button, trying once more. Static answered, louder this time, then cut into silence. No signal. The marsh blocked everything. No backup was coming. The lynx gave another desperate heave, but only managed to cover itself with more sludge. Its eyes were half-lidded now, exhaustion setting in. Megan forced herself to breathe, to think. She could not pull the animal out with her arms alone, not with the mud sucking so hard. She needed to change the angle, to give it a ramp, a way to climb rather than be hauled. She backed up along the boards, boots slipping. At the tree line, she grabbed 2 more planks, heavier, damp with age. Dragging them back, she laid them out side by side. extending the path a little farther into the bog. The smell of rot and stagnant water rose around her as she worked. Her fingers were raw, splinters biting under her skin, but she ignored the pain. She shoved the planks until the ends dipped into the muck, forming a crude slope. The lynx's gaze flicked to the new boards, then back at her. Its sides heaved with shallow breaths. Megan dropped flat on her stomach, stretching the branch again, this time toward the planks. "Come on," she muttered, urging it. "Use them. Just one step." The cat's paw slapped against the wood, then slid off, slick with mud. It tried again, claws scratching against the board but failing to hold. Megan shoved the branch under its chest, lifting, straining with every muscle in her arms. The lynx snarled, more in fear than aggression, and kicked forward. For an instant its body rose higher, its weight shifting onto the board. Megan felt a rush of relief. But the moment collapsed as quickly as it began. The board beneath the lynx tilted, sinking deeper into the sludge. With a sickening lurch, the animal lost its grip. Mud swallowed its chest again, then lapped at its chin. Megan's stomach dropped. She lunged with the branch, pressing it desperately under the lynx's jaw, keeping its head above the surface. The animal coughed, gagging on the stench of muck, but at least it was still breathing. Her arms shook violently. She couldn't hold like this forever. "Think, damn it," she hissed at herself. She shifted her weight, easing the branch higher, propping it against one of the planks to relieve some strain. The lynx clung to it with its paws, eyes rolling in terror. Megan pressed her cheek against the damp board beneath her, every muscle trembling. The sunlight blazed down, hot and relentless, drying the sweat on her back even as her hands froze in the cold mud. Hours felt like minutes. She knew she had only bought time. The lynx was trapped deeper than before, its body nearly immobile. If she left to find proper equipment, it might not survive until she returned. But staying here without a better plan meant they could both fail. She closed her eyes for a second, listening to the ragged sound of the lynx's breathing. When she opened them, she caught sight of a thick pine branch half buried in weeds at the far edge of the clearing. Stronger than the ones she'd tried before. Her pulse jumped. If she could wedge that under its body, maybe create a lever, she could shift the balance. Carefully she eased back, pulling the branch away from the lynx's grip. The animal groaned, a hollow, broken sound that clawed at her gut. "I'll be back," she whispered, voice fierce. She crawled backward along the planks, then stood, sprinting across the clearing toward the branch. Behind her, the lynx cried again, weaker now, almost fading. The sound dug into her spine like nails. Megan bent, heaving the heavy limb free from the weeds. Her arms strained, but adrenaline pushed her forward. She dragged it back toward the bog, mud sucking at her boots as she neared the edge again. The lynx's head barely rose above the surface now, its eyes glazed, body shuddering with every breath. Megan's throat tightened. This was her last chance. She shoved the limb into the muck beside the animal, leaning her weight into it, trying to angle it beneath the lynx's chest. The wood groaned, the mud resisted, but slowly the branch sank under. The lynx shifted, weakly pushing its paws against the new surface. Megan pressed harder, sliding the branch deeper, creating a wedge. The animal's body lifted just slightly, enough to clear a breath. She gasped, heart hammering. It wasn't free, but it was alive. The fight was far from over, but Megan knew one thing for certain now. She was not walking away. Not until the lynx was out of the bog, standing on solid ground again. Megan crouched on the boards, mud streaking her arms. The limb she'd wedged under the lynx kept its head barely above the surface. The animal trembled, exhausted, breaths ragged. Megan scanned the bog. A branch alone wasn't enough. It needed a path beneath its paws. She crawled back toward the tree line. The old observation post wasn't far. She remembered warped planks and a coil of rope left there years ago. Her pulse jumped. That was what she needed. She sprinted uphill, yanked open the creaking door, grabbed the rope, and dragged boards into the sunlight. Muscles screaming, she tied them together as rough platforms. Back at the bog, sweat drenched her shirt. The lynx barely made a sound, eyes dull. She dropped the boards, shoved one forward, then another, tying the rope around her waist. Inch by inch she built a path. She forced a plank sideways under the sludge, wedging it beneath the lynx's chest. The animal groaned, claws scrabbling weakly. Its body rose a few inches, mud sliding off. Megan slid a loop of rope toward the torso with a branch. Too weak to resist, the lynx let her cinch it tight. She pulled gently, testing. The cat shifted but didn't panic. Relief surged. She leaned back, rope burning her palms. The lynx coughed, forelegs catching on the planks. Together they moved, her pulling, it clawing forward. The plank tilted. She nearly fell into the sludge. She flattened out, elbows braced, teeth clenched. The lynx snarled, then lunged forward, chest dragging onto the plank. Mud poured away. Megan hauled again, guiding it onto the next board. Slowly it pulled itself higher, hindquarters still stuck but progress visible. Her arms burned, but she didn't let go. At last one paw reached the third plank, claws hooking on. Megan sobbed with relief. The lynx crawled farther, chest fully clear. Both froze, panting, bodies shaking. The lynx sprawled on the planks, eyes half closed. Megan whispered, "We're not done, but we're getting there." The bog gurgled beneath, sucking at the wood. Time was short. Megan braced herself for the final push to bring the lynx to solid ground. Megan's body ached from hours of strain, but she refused to give in. The rope dug into her palms, mud streaked her clothes, and every muscle in her arms burned. The lynx lay stretched on the makeshift planks, its chest finally free, but the rest of its body remained stuck in the bog's grip. Its hind legs twitched weakly, struggling to gain purchase. Megan knew it was now or never. The boards beneath them creaked and sank a little deeper with each movement, threatening to collapse altogether. She planted her boots at the edge of the last board, wrapped the rope twice around her forearms, and leaned back with all her weight. The rope went taut, vibrating with tension. The lynx groaned, claws scraping against the wood. Its back legs slipped, then kicked, but the mud clung to them like cement. Megan's teeth clenched as she hauled again. The rope burned her skin raw, and her breath came in harsh gasps. The lynx tried to lift itself, but exhaustion dragged it down. Its head dropped for a moment, eyes nearly closing. Megan shouted over the rush of her own heartbeat. "Don't stop. Come on. You're almost out." Her voice was hoarse, desperate, but it filled the clearing. The lynx stirred, ears flicking, and let out a guttural growl. It pushed forward, hind legs thrashing, sending a spray of muck into the air. The sudden movement jolted Megan backward. She slipped, falling onto her knees, mud splattering across her face. The rope slid through her grip, nearly tearing from her hands. Pain shot through her fingers, but she locked down harder, wrapping the rope once more around her wrist. She dug her boots into the bog's edge, mud swallowing them to the ankles. With a cry that was half anger, half determination, she pulled again. The lynx heaved, dragging itself another few inches. Its hindquarters rose, then sank again with a sickening squelch. Megan grunted, pulling harder, her arms screaming with fatigue. She shifted her position, leaning sideways, using her whole body as leverage. For a moment nothing happened. Then the rope jerked, and the lynx shifted upward. It clawed the planks furiously, eyes blazing with wild fear and stubborn will. Megan slipped again, this time flat onto her stomach. Mud coated her chest, sucking at her clothes. She spat dirt from her mouth, coughing, but never released the rope. She braced her feet against a root protruding from the bank, teeth grinding. The rope felt like it might cut her skin to the bone, but she didn't care. All that mattered was the animal pulling with her. The lynx growled, low and fierce, and kicked forward again. Its back legs tore through the sludge, splattering black water across Megan's arms. The plank groaned, bending under the combined weight. Megan's eyes widened in terror. If the board snapped, they'd both be finished. She shouted through clenched teeth, "Now! Push, damn it!" The lynx seemed to hear. With one violent surge, it thrust its body upward, claws tearing gouges into the wood. Megan yanked with everything she had left. The rope cut deep into her hands, pain so sharp it blurred her vision, but she refused to let go. The lynx's hindquarters rose higher, mud cascading from its fur in thick sheets. For one heartbeat, time froze. Megan, straining with all her might, and the lynx, locked in its final fight against the swamp. Then the board shifted again, threatening to sink, and Megan nearly lost her balance. She slammed her elbow down, anchoring herself. Her face was inches from the sludge, the stench choking her throat. The lynx let out a roar, guttural and broken, and threw itself forward. Its hind legs cleared the mud at last, slamming onto the planks with a heavy thud. Megan gasped, almost sobbing, as the weight in the rope lessened. She pulled one final time, guiding the lynx across the last plank towards solid ground. The animal collapsed onto the grass at the bog's edge, sides heaving, eyes wide and wild. Megan dropped the rope, her arms trembling uncontrollably. She crawled forward, collapsing onto her knees beside the animal. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Megan could only hear her own rasping breaths and the pounding of her heart. Mud covered her from head to toe, stinging her eyes, burning the scrapes on her skin. The lynx lay still, chest rising and falling in shallow bursts. Megan reached out a shaking hand, stopping just short of touching its fur. "You're safe," she whispered, voice breaking. The lynx's ears flicked, eyes rolling to meet hers. It let out a faint growl, more weary than hostile, and pushed its front legs under its chest. Megan's pulse spiked, ready to spring back, but the animal only shifted, dragging itself farther from the bog's edge. Relief flooded through her, hot and dizzying. She sank back on her heels, head tilted toward the sky, eyes stinging with tears she hadn't realized she was holding. The bog gurgled behind them, swallowing the planks one by one as they slid deeper into the muck. Megan watched the boards vanish, shivering at how close they had come to losing everything. She wiped mud from her face, breathing heavily. The lynx staggered to its feet, shaky but standing, its body dripping with filth. It turned its head toward her, silent, then limped toward the treeline. Megan didn't follow. She sat there, covered in mud, exhausted beyond words, watching the animal disappear into the safety of the forest. Her hands burned, her body shook, but her heart swelled with relief. She had kept her promise. The lynx was alive, and that was enough. The forest was silent, but for the bog bubbling behind her. Megan sat on the grass, mud dripping from her clothes, arms trembling. Every muscle ached, but all she saw was the lynx sprawled, chest heaving, fur caked in sludge. Its ears flicked weakly, each breath harsh. She steadied her breathing, resisting the urge to move closer. This was no pet. It was wild, proud even now. She wiped mud from her eyes, the sun warming her chilled skin, and finally allowed herself stillness. The lynx twitched its paws, then lifted its head, golden eyes locking on her. For a moment she felt measured, not feared. It coughed, shifted to its belly, then pushed up. Mud peeled from its fur as it swayed, then stood taller, chest filling with a strong breath. It stepped forward, paws sinking in damp earth. Megan leaned back, giving it space. The lynx paused, glanced at her once more, then vanished into the trees, its body glowing briefly in a shaft of sunlight. Silence returned, peaceful this time. Megan lay on the grass, staring at the canopy, mud clinging to her skin. She laughed once, short and shaky, then faded into quiet. Her hands stung, raw with rope burns, but she smiled. Proof she hadn't given up, proof the lynx had a chance. Life stirred around her. A squirrel darted, insects hummed. She pushed herself up, groaning, brushing at her clothes. Long shadows stretched across the clearing. She lingered, eyes on the path where the lynx had gone. Softly she whispered, "Stay safe out there." Gathering the rope, she slung it over her shoulder and turned toward the trail. Behind her the bog bubbled, erasing the fight. Ahead, the forest opened wide and green. She walked into it, heavy but lightened, carrying the day as memory, not burden.